Hi everyone, and welcome back to another how-to video. Today's how-to is going to be on using gestures to aid comprehension. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you follow our blog for more tips, lessons, ideas, resources. We send out a monthly resource roundup. Sometimes we include freebies or discounts to our TPT stores. So make sure you're following us for more ideas. If there's any how-tos you ever want to see or looking for help with a particular topic or lesson, make sure you leave us a comment or send an email, and we're happy to I could post or make a video on whatever it is you need. Before we get started, I'm just going to go into a little bit kind of background on gestures, and then I'll actually at the very end show you several of the gestures, actually a whole big list of gestures that I use in my classes, so that if you're looking for a gesture to use for a verb, um, then I've already got one figured out for you. So first of all, gestures are movements either with your hands or your body that help aid comprehension. Gestures are not ASL. They are not sign language. Sometimes when I'm looking for a new gesture, I'm like, they're having a hard time figuring out this verb, or what can I do for this gesture? Sometimes I'll look at the ASL, and if it feels obvious, then I might use it as a gesture, or I might come up with a different one. But just to be clear, I'm not teaching them ASL. And I try to make that clear with the kids. Like, it's really just to help us remember what the word is to engage our body, and it is not sign language whatsoever. Gestures allow you to use more of the target language without just referring to English, because they're helping aid the comprehension. The students are understanding what you're saying without always translating. So it allows you to stay more in the target language. And I find that with my fourth and fifth grade, especially by teaching them some key gestures, I'm able to use a lot of French. Sometimes I feel like more French than I do with my like seventh and eighth graders, because I've taught them these verbs for the instructions, like read, write, listen. Um, so I'm able to use that and stay in French without sacrificing understanding. The goal really is to support understanding in all levels. So for a gesture, for example, um, live, you can use the same gesture for like live in the present tense, past tense, future. It's really just help them understand that that verb holds the meaning of live, but you could be saying it in any tense whatsoever, and that will help with the understanding. You might just point behind you for like past, or ahead for future if that's something that you guys are working on with the upper levels. I teach French 1, so really we're generally in the present tense, but sometimes they'll have like a verb in the past tense, and so if I have the gesture, I just still use it, and they're able to understand what I meant, and they're not caught up on, is it past, is it present, is it future? It also allows you to engage kinesthetic learners. I feel like a lot of times it's a very academic class for them. It can be fun, but there's not always a lot of movement. It's a lot of reading, listening, writing. So gestures allow students to engage with the content. So when I teach them in gesture, they can do it with you. Um, or sometimes I'll give them like a pop quiz. So they have to like do the gesture. I'll say, show me this word, and they have to do the gesture for it. And it really allows them to like get that movement, and a lot of times they remember the word better because they're doing the gesture along with you. It can also help you to build classroom community and have fun, because if you're trying to think of a new gesture for a particular phrase and you're really not sure, you can have the class come up with one. They might come up with a really good one that you hadn't thought of, and so they kind of feel like they're building that learning together, by coming up with a gesture, and it's something for your particular class. And you can also turn it into a game, like a Simon Says type thing. Once you've learned some gestures, just kind of practice to review, um, and like, or use like a pop quiz. Like I said, there really is no grade attached to it. Just if they haven't had me for a while in their UA rotation, a lot of times I'll do it just to kind of bring them back and see what they remember, and spark the French deep in their brains. But like I said, you can turn it into a game. And I've seen a lot of them online about with like grabbing a plate or like the marker game. So really is a way that you can use them as a way to build community with your students. When you're introducing a new gesture, you're gonna want to do the gesture while saying the word. So if it's regard, you're gonna like do the gesture and say the word regard with while you're doing the gesture. A lot of times then you want to establish the meaning. So sometimes I'll ask the students, oh, what do you think this means? And they'll like spit out something, sometimes wrong or they're, close. And then I might tell them, they might say, look, I'm like, yes, it means look. So everybody like regard and everybody do it with me. Um, so I'll have them practice it with me. And then we just repeat it. And every time I say the word, point to my eye for look. As they get better at it, I almost always use the gesture. I think sometimes I use them in normal conversations with my friends and not my students. I'm just so used to saying the word and doing the motion that I might be like, oh, she said, and I'm doing the gesture for said. So I almost always do it, but once they know it and they own the word, you don't necessarily have to do the gesture. But the point is that repetition, eventually they will all know what that word means without the visual support. But that really is the goal, is just to support them. So it's important that you practice, 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 and repeat. I said you can bring in the games, you can have a pop quiz at the beginning of class for your 5 most recent gestures and throw in an old one, and just keep that repetition going, so they feel successful and they feel like they're understanding, because a lot of these words are ones that, sometimes there are cognates, but sometimes they're words that are not whatsoever close. And so, but they'll remember it because of the gesture and that repetition. If you're not sure where to start, so maybe you've been thinking, well, I've been thinking about using gestures, but I just don't know what to do. Like I said, at the end of the video, I'm going to show you so many of the gestures that I use, probably be overwhelming, to give you an idea. But what you're going to do is you want to start, maybe just pick a few or even just one, just introduce one to your students. Maybe there's a word they've been struggling with, a particular verb. These are all verbs that they need help remembering. So just, try to pick one and start there. You're going to introduce it, you're going to establish the meaning, and you're going to practice, practice, practice with your students. And slowly over time, you can incorporate more. So with my 4th and 5th grade, so maybe start with these 5. If you're not really sure, these 5 will help you do a lot of like the instructional, like just giving directions. So it's look, listen, read, write, and think. That's just 5. That's 5. They're not super hard. And so we start with those. And then now we got really good at them. We had some gestures for weather. And now I'm starting to add in like eats and lives, because we're talking about animals. And so slowly over time, I'm starting to add in new gestures. And each time we introduce one, I just do the gesture. We use it a bunch in that lesson. Said they own it. So over time, you don't need to give them all of these verbs at once. You're just adding them in as they come up in the curriculum. For more background information on using gestures in TPR, I highly recommend you check out Catherine's post. I will link it in the notes for the post for this episode of our how-to, so that way you can check that out. And she's got links to some good ACTFL articles about why gestures and TPR, total physical response, work for acquisition. So without further ado, I'm going to head and stop sharing my screen. So it's just me, so you can see me full screen. Like I said, I have a big list, so I'm going to go kind of quickly, but make sure I go slow enough and kind of explain the different ones. So I'm going to start with my top 5. These are the ones that I would recommend if you're just getting started with gestures. And like I said, I use these with my 4th and 5th grade. So they can get with it really quick. So if you're looking for something to be able to keep more of your instructions in the target language, then I recommend these 5. My first is look. Just point your eye and look. Okay. This is really good if I'm going to say look. When I say look at your packet. or look and point to the board. Next one is listen, especially if they're getting chatty. Just do this, stare at them and repeat, listen. So holding your ear, I tell them, holding your ear like you're eavesdropping on a conversation. And then we have write. So hold up your fake paper, your pen, write. A lot of times we'll be doing an activity where they're going to write like the cognates. And so I'm able to say écrit, les cognates, and they can figure it out. Or écrit, un, deux, trois. I want them to make a number list for answering the questions. Next one is lis, listen. Oh, sorry, read. Read. So you got your fake book? Okay, so they're reading their book. This is good because I can, point to the board and say, look, listen, read. And we'll do it together. Read in French, read in English. And they pick up on it really quick. Number 5 is think. Some feels pretty obvious. They're able to figure this out really quick. So with those top 5, look, listen, write, read, think, I'm able to give 90% of my instructions in French by just using those words. Now they're very simplified directions, always grammatically correct, maybe not so much. But I'm able to give them a lot of instructions in that way. I can say, look, listen, don't write, if I just want them to be paying attention. Listen. Okay. The next one is there is or there are, which are the same in French and I know in Spanish. So my colleague came up with this one. So when they do it, they have to say there is, there are as they do it. So there is, there are. So it's up, down. There is, there are. That's super useful because for, at least in French, the il y a, the 3 words really throws them off. So having something for there is, there are helps them get a little bit quicker. Next one is has. It's about your hand. And so for the has, you're going to grab something and now you have it. Have. 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 Then we have lives. So in French, habite, it sounds like habitat. So I tell my kids, what is your habitat? And they say my house. And so I'm like, yep, that's why we've got a roof over our head. Habite, lives. Then we have eats. So I'm like, you're grabbing a cookie. You eat. Eat. It's a little more obvious. We have like. So I just like to hold up a heart. My colleague used to just draw a heart with her hands. Or dislike, break your heart. Or you can draw a cross through. Or love, like a beating heart. Your heart's beating for it. Love. And then hate is like the dislike, but more aggressive, where you rip it apart. Hate. Put. These are pointing. Put. Put. Give. So you're going to start with your 2 hands close to you and go away from you. Give. Give. And then the opposite could be receive. So again, starts away from you and comes back. Comes back. You're receiving. Take, grab, and pull it towards you. Grab, take. Oh, look for. Okay, you're searching for buried treasure. Look for. Now I use this one for both counting. We're counting the numbers in my 4th, 5th grade counting. We're counting votes. Or also for how many, because they usually figure out if I'm asking a question or not. So count. Or how many, because they're figuring out it has something to do with numbers. Now the next one, why. I have this funny meme poster of why. So whenever I say pourquoi, I'm always like, Why? You know, up in the air, like, why is this happening? Why? Prefer. Put your arms are a scale. You're like, which one do I like more? Prefer. Now, for either or questions, to let them know that, I'm asking a question, I don't want them to just say yes or no, because we do a lot of yes or no questions. If I want them to then try to tell me the word either or. So I'm very like specific in trying to indicate that it's either or, so is today Monday or Tuesday? Monday or Tuesday. And so they kind of realize that it's a multiple choice question. I did this earlier for not, like trying to just like, no, no, usually shake my head, my hands, like don't write. Okay. Don't talk. Back to this again. Swim. This is pretty obvious. Some of these are very, very obvious. And so it's like, oh, not that hard to incorporate. You don't even have to teach them. Like they're going to figure that out on their own. Okay. So you're swimming. Cut. Really good if you need them to cut something out. Doing arts and crafts, cut. So we had write. Sometimes for my fourth, fifth grade, I'll just tell them to write when I mean draw. But write and then draw. It's kind of like a infinity sign. Like they're painting. Use this for draw. Feels like over your heart. Like what's in your heart? How are you feeling? Go. So this one for your hand, and this is kind of like an airplane taking off. Go. Go. Walk. See. Some of them have had this happen multiple times. Like I see you. Throw. This is another one that's like obvious they're not really going to need, but you almost wouldn't have thought about using it. Dance. Another obvious one. Sing. And I always like try to sing the word sing. Sing. Box. So a lot of times I'll tell them like, écrit en boîte a boîte à. That one's useful too for giving instructions if you have like a little packet that they write in. Yeah. Raise your hand. Again. They know, and they don't know lèvement at all, so it's helpful to do it with them. I did receive. Hungry. This one's like eating, and I rub my stomach at the same time. Like food, eat. And I look like you're kind of like sad, bent over. Is really helpful. Open. Open. It's like open the packet. Look at page 3. Close the packet. Close your journal. Give this a lot at the end of the class. Turn. Turn. So it's kind of like is their whole packet. So usually I tell them to turn to the back, which is where their calendar is. Turn. To do or to make. Kind of like you're making a snowball. Here. Here. Right. So we've got like listening, which is more active. And then here. Want. So kind of like, give me, or this too. Give me. Can. There's a couple options for this one. So you can do kind of like the Rosie the Riveter. Yes, I can. Or you could have a little engine that could thing going on with like, like a train. Like you could have them even go like, we should poo, or something like a little engine that could. Say and repeat usually end up being the same thing because when I want them to repeat something, I want them to say something. So like put your mouth away because I want them to say it. Right. It's coming out of my mouth. So says. Repeat. Come. No. It's like you're taking something out of your head. It comes out. I always think of Harry Potter. Pencil. No. Work. This one's a little more active. Or like digging a hole. Digging. It's like working. Now the next few, so those are a lot of the verbs, are very active verbs, look, give, hear, think, see. And then I have some other ones too for like my 4th and 5th grade. We learn for weather. So whenever I teach weather, I have them repeat it, we do the gesture, and then I like kind of circle back with all the gestures. And it's really helpful because I see them for 4 or 5 days, and then I don't see them for 9 other 5-day UA rotations. And so it ends up being, especially with vacations, like a couple of months before I see them again. So it's helpful that we've learned these gestures. So then, and asking them like, what's the weather like in this habitat without having to go back through all the weather, I can just do the gesture. So it's sunny. So you hold up your little sun in the sky. It's cloudy. Try to cloud with your fingers. Usually I have them do it like to the syllables because nuage is heard. Nuage. Raining, snowing, hot, cool, and cold. Good weather, bad weather. Now the next one's some prepositions. So if you're getting some higher levels up there, now I'm not going to take credit for all these because my colleague, my predecessor, actually had a whole preposition song that these went with. So I just keep reusing them. So got on, under, in, in front of, behind, around, to the side of, to the left, to the right, near, which in French is près, so it makes sense, près de, and far. Just kind of to go through the song in my head to remember the order, which can be really useful, if you're saying like it's to the left of the book, to the left. If you're giving instructions in class, or we're talking about some geography right now in 8th grade, so it kind of helps to have like some of those prepositions in there. And then the last few could be more for like subject pronouns. So if I'm saying like I like, so you point to yourself, one thumb. So you, one finger, you, pointing away to get them, you. He, she. Now we, 2 fingers. So you're pointing to yourself and someone else. We, y'all, like you plural, 2 fingers pointing away to 2 people. And then they, 2 people either side, right? It's like first, second, singular, first person singular, first person plural, okay? Second person singular, second person plural, third person singular, third person plural. Okay, so you can kind of see the singular versus plural. So it's really helpful, especially if I'm saying like, I like chocolate, you like chocolate. Really helpful just having that kind of the movement. And a lot of times we'll like practice with it, and it just kind of helps to like do the movement and say the words and remember them a little bit better as we start to get more into more structures. So That's it. That's my whole big list of gestures. I hope they were helpful. I hope this helps you get started. And remember, like, if this is new to you, maybe just pick one. Or if you're looking for some new ones, here's a whole bunch. But don't overwhelm yourself by trying to do all of them at once. Just start somewhere, and start picking them up and adding them into as they come up in your curriculum. Because they really aren't supposed to hinder comprehension. They're supposed to aid it to help students to understand what you're saying, instructions you're giving, without just repeating them in English. So, I hope this was helpful. Again, make sure you check out Catherine's post on using gestures for some more background information. And if there's any other how-to videos or any other posts that you want to see, just make sure you leave a comment, and definitely sign up for our email list. Wishing you and your students all the best.